The suburban streets were serene, bathed in the golden light of a lazy Sunday afternoon. Families strolled through tree-lined sidewalks, neighbors exchanged friendly waves, and the hum of lawnmowers blended with children's laughter. The scene was picturesque, a neighborhood known for its diverse community and peaceful atmosphere. At the heart of this quiet enclave, the Williams family enjoyed their weekend tradition. Thomas and Linda Williams, a middle-aged black couple, had parked their car near the park to join their teenage daughter, Zoe, for a quick family picnic. Thomas, an eloquent high school teacher, and Linda, a nurse known for her warmth, often used these moments to unwind from their demanding jobs and connect as a family. Zoe, a bright and tech-savvy 16-year-old with a knack for storytelling, had her camera in hand, snapping candid pictures of her parents and the surroundings. Unbeknownst to them, their peaceful afternoon was about to unravel. From the corner of the street, a police cruiser rolled slowly into view, its lights off but presence looming. Officer Derek Klein, a man known for his strict demeanor and history of questionable and unruly minorities, was patrolling the neighborhood. He prided himself on keeping order, but often crossed lines others wouldn't dare. Spotting the Williamses near their car, Klein's gaze lingered. His perception twisted their normalcy into suspicion. As Klein approached, his demeanor changed. His radio crackled, but he silenced it with a swipe of his hand. The park's light-hearted chatter seemed to fade under the weight of his arrival. "Afternoon!" Klein called out, his voice cutting through the air. "This your car?" He pointed toward the Williams sedan. Thomas looked up, startled but calm. "Yes, officer," he replied. "Is something wrong?" Klein's sharp eyes scanned the family. His stance was rigid, his hand resting conspicuously on his belt. "Mind if I see some ID? Got a report about a vehicle matching this description being in the wrong place at the wrong time." Linda frowned. "This is a public park. What could be wrong about being here?" The officer's lips curled into a thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just following up. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Zoe, standing a few feet away, instinctively hit the record button on her phone, tucking it discreetly into her hoodie pocket. She'd grown up watching the world through her parents' eyes and had learned early about the double standards they often faced. Something about the officer's demeanor made her uneasy. Thomas handed over his ID, his movements measured and deliberate. "Here you go, officer, but I assure you, there's nothing suspicious about us being here." Klein studied the ID for longer than necessary, his expression unreadable. "You folks live around here?" "Yes," Linda interjected, her tone firm but polite. "We've lived here for 10 years. The officer didn't respond immediately, instead circling the car, peering through the windows. "Nice car," he remarked, his tone dripping with implication. "Mind if I take a look inside?" Thomas straightened, his posture stiffening slightly. "Actually, officer, yes, I do mind. This is our personal property, and I don't see a reason for you to search it." Klein's eyes narrowed. His hand hovered over his radio as though preparing to escalate. "Cooperation goes a long way, Mr. Williams," he said. "I'd hate for this to become an issue." Nearby, passers-by began to notice the interaction. Some slowed their steps, their curiosity piqued. A jogger paused mid-stride, her expression concerned as she glanced between the officer and the family. The once carefree atmosphere of the park shifted, tension seeping into the air. Zoe's heart raced, but her mind was focused. Her phone continued recording, capturing every word, every movement. She had seen too many stories that began like this, stories that didn't end well. She wasn't about to let her family become another statistic. Thomas took a deep breath, his voice steady despite the fire simmering beneath. "Officer, we've done nothing wrong. If you have a legitimate reason to detain us, I'd appreciate you stating it clearly." Klein smirked, his posture growing more confrontational. "You people always have something to say, don't you?" Linda's eyes widened, her hand instinctively reaching for her daughter. "What do you mean by you people?" she asked, her voice trembling with restrained anger. Klein shrugged, feigning innocence. "I didn't mean anything by it. Now, are we going to cooperate? Or do I need to call for backup?" The growing crowd murmured among themselves, a mix of confusion and unease. A man holding his dog's leash whispered to his wife, "Why's he pushing them so hard? They don't look like trouble." Zoe's grip on her phone tightened. This wasn't just about them anymore. It was about showing the world the truth of what they were facing. She couldn't let fear hold her back. "Officer," Zoe spoke up, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "Why are you really doing this? Is it because of how we look?" Klein turned his gaze to her, his eyes narrowing. "Watch your tone, young lady. You don't want to make this worse." But Zoe didn't back down. She met his glare with unwavering resolve. She wasn't just fighting for her family. She was fighting for everyone who had ever faced injustice and been silenced. The tension hung thick in the air as the Williams family stood their ground. The officer's grip on control began to falter, and the crowd around them grew larger. Questions lingered like smoke. Why were they being targeted? What would happen next? And most importantly, who would stand up for the truth? The park was alive with activity, its green expanse dotted with families enjoying the afternoon. Children's laughter blended with the rustling of trees, and joggers paced through paths lined with blooming flowers. Near the edge of a parking lot, the Williams family stood at the heart of what was quickly becoming a troubling spectacle. Linda Williams' hand clutched her husband's arm, her fingers betraying her growing unease. Thomas, her husband, stood tall, his face a mask of calm determination. Their teenage daughter Zoe quietly held her phone, its camera focused on the unfolding scene. The red light blinked, capturing every moment. "Sir, I'm asking you one last time," Officer Derek Klein said, his voice carrying a tone of veiled menace. "Step aside and let me search your car." His hand rested on his belt, his stance widening in a show of authority. Thomas met the officer's gaze, unflinching. "Officer, with all due respect, I know my rights. Without probable cause, you cannot search our car. And you don't have any cause except for what you think of how we look." Klein's lips curled into a smirk. "Probable cause?" he repeated mockingly. "That's funny coming from someone who's stalling this much. What are you hiding, Mr. Williams? Drugs? Stolen goods? Maybe something you'd rather I didn't find?" Linda's voice broke through the tension. "Officer, this is harassment," she said firmly, though her voice wavered slightly. "We've done nothing wrong. We're just here for a picnic. What possible reason could you have to think otherwise?" The onlookers who had been casually strolling nearby began to slow down, drawn by the escalating exchange. A middle-aged man paused to watch, frowning. A young couple, hand in hand, whispered to each other, their expressions reflecting discomfort. Among them, a woman jogging with her dog came to a halt, pulling out her phone. Klein's smirk grew sharper. "Reasons?" he said, his voice dripping with mock civility. "How about the fact that you've been standing here arguing with me for the past 10 minutes? That's suspicious behavior if I've ever seen it." Zoe couldn't stay silent any longer. She stepped forward, her phone still raised. "Suspicious behavior? Standing up for yourself is suspicious?" Her voice rang clear and strong, cutting through the murmurs of the growing crowd. Klein's head snapped toward her. "Young lady, I suggest you keep your mouth shut. You're only making this worse for your parents." Zoe didn't back down. "You're making this worse for yourself," she shot back. "I'm recording everything, and people are watching. You can't just get away with this." The jogger nodded in agreement. She's right, the woman said loudly, her phone pointed at Klein. This doesn't look like protecting and serving to me. Klein's face flushed red, a vein bulging at his temple. He turned toward the crowd, barking, "Disperse immediately! This is an official police matter. Anyone interfering will be cited for obstruction." But the crowd didn't budge. If anything, more people joined, their phones raised. The buzz of whispers grew louder. "Why is he targeting them?" one man asked. "It's obvious why," a woman muttered. "Look at them. They're black." Officer Carter, Klein's younger partner, shifted uncomfortably on his feet. His eyes darted between Klein and the Williams family. Unease etched on his face. "Maybe we should de-escalate," he suggested hesitantly. "This doesn't seem like it's going anywhere." Klein glared at him. "De-escalate? Carter, this is exactly why rookies shouldn't think. Just follow my lead." "But Derek," Carter pressed, "they haven't actually done anything. We don't have a reason to hold them here." Klein's sneer returned. "Our job isn't to let people like them do whatever they want. If you're too soft to see that, maybe you should find another line of work." Carter's lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't agree, but he wasn't ready to challenge Klein outright. Not yet. Thomas, meanwhile, kept his composure. "Officer," he said, his tone measured, "I don't know what you're hoping to accomplish here, but we're not going to give you what you want. If you think we've done something wrong, arrest us. Otherwise, we'll be on our way." Klein stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low growl. "Don't think you can tell me how to do my job, Mr. Williams. And don't think you can intimidate me," Thomas replied evenly. The tension was electric. The crowd grew restless, their murmurs turning into words of support. "Leave them alone," someone shouted. "This is harassment," another added. Zoe, emboldened by the support, turned her phone to the crowd. "See this?" she said loudly. "This is what it looks like when people stand up for what's right." Klein's frustration reached a boiling point. He grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, I need backup at the South Park lot. We've got a situation." "What kind of situation?" The dispatcher's voice crackled through. Klein hesitated. "A crowd control issue," he said, his voice tight. Moments later, the sound of sirens pierced the air. Another patrol car arrived, and two officers stepped out. One was a tall woman with an authoritative presence, the other a stocky man with a serious expression. The lead officer, whose badge read Taylor, approached Klein. "What's going on here, Derek?" she asked. Klein gestured toward the Williams family. "Suspicious individuals refusing to cooperate. They've been obstructing our investigation." Taylor raised an eyebrow. "Obstructing?" She turned to the family. "Sir, ma'am, can you tell me what's going on?" Linda stepped forward. "Officer, we were just here for a picnic. We've done nothing wrong, but this officer insists on searching our car without cause. When we refused, he called for backup." Taylor's eyes narrowed. "Is that true, Klein?" "They're being uncooperative," Klein replied defensively. "I'm trying to ensure public safety." Taylor's gaze shifted back to the Williams family, then to the crowd. She saw the phones, the recording, the growing unrest. "This doesn't look like public safety," she said quietly. "It looks like trouble." The tension reached its peak as the crowd's murmurs turned into vocal protests. "Let them go!" someone yelled. "This is America! They have rights!" another shouted. Klein's face twisted with anger. He turned to Taylor, his voice sharp. "Are you questioning my judgment?" Taylor held his gaze, her expression neutral, but firm. "I'm questioning the optics of this situation," she said, "and I'm questioning whether we're doing our job or making a scene." Before Klein could respond, Zoe stepped forward, holding her phone high. "To everyone watching," she said, her voice clear and unwavering, "this is what happens when you stand your ground. They think they can silence us, but they can't. The world is watching now." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Klein's face turned brier red, his authority slipping away. Carter stepped forward, placing a hand on Klein's arm. "Maybe it's time to let this go," he said quietly. Klein shrugged him off. "I don't need advice from you," he snapped. But Taylor's voice cut through the noise. "Derek, enough," she said firmly. "We're not escalating this further. Everyone stand down." Klein glared at her but didn't argue. He turned back to the Williams family, his voice dripping with venom. "You got lucky. This time," he said. "But don't think for a second that I'm done with you." Thomas's voice was calm, almost pitying. "We're not afraid of you, officer. Truth has a way of coming out." As the officers stepped back and the tension began to dissipate, Zoe turned her phone off. She looked at her parents, her expression determined. "We're not letting this slide," she said. "This video is going to show the world what just happened." Linda hugged her daughter tightly. "You're so brave," she whispered. "But are you sure?" Zoe nodded. "Absolutely. This isn't just about us. It's about everyone who's ever faced this kind of injustice. It's time to fight back." As the family walked away, the crowd began to disperse, their phones still buzzing with recorded evidence. The battle wasn't over, but the Williams family knew one thing for certain. They weren't fighting alone. The once tranquil suburban neighborhood now carried an undercurrent of tension that was impossible to ignore. The harassment by Officer Daniels had not just disrupted the lives of Maya and David, but had also shaken the community. Conversations in grocery stores, parks, and even church gatherings revolved around the unfolding events. Whispers of support mixed with unease filled the air, as the couple's resilience inspired some and unsettled others. Maya and David were exhausted, both emotionally and physically, from Officer Daniels' relentless targeting. Despite their weariness, they found strength in each other. Their teenage daughter, Naya, observed their struggles with a heavy heart, but also a growing sense of determination. She decided that enough was enough. Naya began documenting every instance of harassment. Her phone became a tool for justice as she recorded videos and took photos of Daniel's actions. She started creating short, impactful clips, combining footage of Daniel's confrontations with heartfelt commentary about her family's experience. One evening, she presented her first edited video to her parents. The screen showed clips of Daniels berating David outside their home, juxtaposed with moments of Maya comforting their visibly shaken daughter. The video ended with Nia's voiceover. "This is our reality, but it doesn't have to be. Together, we can demand change." Maya's eyes welled with tears as the video concluded. "This is powerful," she whispered, pulling Nia into a hug. David nodded, pride shining through his exhaustion. "Let's share it," he said. The video spread quickly on social media. Within hours, it had thousands of views, and people from the neighborhood began reaching out. Messages of support flooded in. "We're with you. Stay strong. And what can we do to help?" Among the messages was one from Rebecca Chen, a civil rights attorney known for taking on high-profile discrimination cases. Rebecca reached out to offer her assistance. During their first meeting, she laid out a plan to challenge Daniels' actions legally. "This isn't just about your family," she said firmly. "It's about holding systems accountable." Rebecca's involvement galvanized the community. Neighbors who had previously been silent began to speak up. Some shared their own experiences of being targeted by Daniels, while others offered resources and connections. The stories painted a damning picture of a pattern of abuse, one that could no longer be ignored. Meanwhile, Daniels grew increasingly frustrated. He watched from his patrol car as Maya and David's home became a hub of activity. Neighbors came and went, carrying supplies or staying for planning sessions. Daniels perceived every visitor as a threat, every conversation as a challenge to his authority. One night, he parked his car directly in front of their driveway, blocking access. David approached him calmly. "Officer Daniels," he said, his voice steady but firm. "You're obstructing my property." Daniels sneered. "Just making sure everything's safe around here," he replied mockingly. David didn't back down. "If you're not here for legitimate reasons, I suggest you move your car." The quiet strength in David's voice momentarily caught Daniels off guard, but instead of leaving, he made a show of turning on his patrol car's lights, bathing the house in red and blue flashes. The spectacle attracted the attention of neighbors, many of whom stepped outside to watch. Inside, Nia captured the scene on her phone, narrating in a steady voice. "This is what we deal with," she said. "Every day, but we're not afraid, and we're not alone." The tension in the neighborhood reached its peak when Maya and David decided to host a community meeting in their backyard. Invitations were sent out, and word spread quickly. By the evening of the meeting, dozens of people had gathered. Some brought folding chairs, while others stood in small groups, chatting nervously. Rebecca Chen opened the meeting with a passionate speech. "This isn't just about one family or one officer," she said. "This is about justice. It's about the kind of community we want to live in." Her words resonated deeply. One by one, neighbors began sharing their stories. An elderly man recounted how Daniels had stopped him for no reason and searched his car. A young mother described how Daniels had followed her home late at night, making her fear for her safety. Each story added another layer to the growing case against Daniels. Throughout the meeting, Nia documented everything, carefully editing clips into a cohesive narrative. Her goal was clear: to take their fight beyond the neighborhood and amplify their voices on a national level. The next day, Nia posted a compilation video titled "Justice for Maya and David, Our Story." The video was raw and emotional, featuring footage of Daniels's harassment, interviews with neighbors, and clips from the community meeting. It ended with Nia's voiceover. "We deserve better. Our community deserves better. Stand with us." Within hours, the video went viral. The hashtag number Justice for Maya and David began trending, and people from all over the country shared the video with messages of solidarity. News outlets picked up the story, and reporters began arriving in the neighborhood, eager to cover the unfolding events. Maya and David were overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. Donations poured in to cover legal fees, and prominent activists reached out to offer their platforms. What had started as a small local issue had become a national movement. As the story gained traction, pressure mounted on the police department. Daniels was called in for questioning, and an internal investigation was launched. Public opinion had turned against him, and his usual confidence began to crumble. One day, as Daniels sat in his patrol car, he received a call from his superior. "You've brought a lot of unwanted attention to this department," the voice on the other end said. "If this continues, there will be consequences." Daniels slammed the phone down, his frustration boiling over. He looked out at Maya and David's house, now adorned with signs of support from neighbors and activists. For the first time, he felt a pang of fear. He had underestimated their resilience and their reach. Despite the growing attention, Maya and David remained grounded. They continued their daily routines as much as possible, refusing to let Daniel's actions consume their lives. Their strength inspired others, and the neighborhood became a beacon of unity. One afternoon, Maya stood on her porch, addressing a group of reporters. "This isn't just about us," she said. "It's about creating a future where no one has to endure what we've been through. We're fighting for accountability, for justice, and for change." Her words echoed across social media, further fueling the movement. Donations continued to pour in, and Rebecca Chen began assembling a team of experts to strengthen their case. As the investigation into Daniels progressed, evidence of his misconduct began to surface. Records revealed a history of complaints against him, many of which had been quietly dismissed. The department faced mounting scrutiny, and calls for reform grew louder. Meanwhile, Nia's videos continued to captivate audiences. Her latest post, titled, "What Does Justice Look Like?" featured interviews with activists and legal experts, exploring the broader implications of their fight. The video ended with a call to action. "Justice isn't a destination, it's a journey. Join us." The video's impact was undeniable. It sparked nationwide conversations about systemic racism and police accountability, with many pointing to Maya and David's story as a powerful example of grassroots activism. As the neighborhood braced for the next chapter in their fight, one thing was clear: they were no longer alone. What had started as a personal struggle had become a collective mission, uniting people from all walks of life in the pursuit of justice. The question now was not if change would come, but how and when. The suspense lingered, keeping everyone on edge as they awaited the resolution of a battle that had captured the nation's attention. The tension surrounding the case had reached its peak, and the once quiet neighborhood was now a battleground for justice. News vans lined the streets, their antennas towering above the rooftops, and reporters stood at the ready, hoping to capture every moment of the unfolding drama. Maya and David's fight had become a symbol for communities across the nation, and the stakes had never been higher. The pivotal day began like any other, but there was an undeniable electricity in the air. Maya and David prepared to face the media, their faces calm but their hearts racing. Nia was upstairs, meticulously editing her latest video. This time, she planned to release a direct message to the police department and the public at large. Meanwhile, Officer Daniels sat in a conference room at the precinct, flanked by his union representative and a legal advisor. The internal investigation into his actions had reached a critical stage, and the evidence against him was damning. Records of prior complaints, body cam footage showing his aggressive behavior, and testimonies from neighbors painted a clear picture of misconduct. The department's leadership faced mounting pressure from the public. Protesters gathered outside the building, holding signs that read, "Accountability now," and "Justice for Maya and David." The chant of the crowd echoed through the precinct's halls, a constant reminder that this case was no longer just about one family. It was about systemic change. At exactly noon, Nia's video went live, titled "The Truth About Officer Daniels." It combined raw footage of his harassment, emotional interviews with her parents, and a powerful call to action. The video concluded with Nia speaking directly to the camera. "Officer Daniels thought he could silence us," she said, her voice steady. "But he underestimated the power of truth and the strength of a community united. To everyone watching, don't let fear stop you from standing up for what's right. Together, we can make a difference." As the pressure on the police department intensified, new information surfaced. An anonymous whistleblower within the precinct leaked documents that revealed Daniels had a history of targeting minority families. The documents included emails and internal memos that showed a pattern of racial profiling, further fueling public outrage. Rebecca Chen held a press conference to address the revelation. Standing before a sea of cameras, she delivered a scathing indictment of the department's handling of Daniels. "This is not just about one officer," she declared. "This is about a culture that has allowed discrimination to thrive unchecked. Maya and David's story is not unique. It's a symptom of a larger problem, and it's time for that to change." The crowd erupted in applause, their voices echoing through the streets. Rebecca's words resonated far beyond the neighborhood, sparking similar protests in other cities. The culmination of the conflict came at a highly publicized town hall meeting. The event, held in the local high school gymnasium, was packed with residents, reporters, and activists. Maya and David sat in the front row, flanked by Rebecca and Nia, while Daniels sat on the opposite side with his legal team. The atmosphere was charged as community members took turns sharing their experiences and demanding accountability. Some spoke through tears, recounting stories of humiliation and fear. Others spoke with fiery determination, calling for immediate reform. When it was Maya's turn to speak, the room fell silent. She stood at the microphone, her hands steady but her voice filled with emotion. "This fight is not just for my family," she said. "It's for every family that has been silenced, every child who has grown up fearing those who are supposed to protect them, and every community that deserves better." Her words were met with a standing ovation. Even those who had previously been hesitant to take a stance were moved by her sincerity. As the meeting continued, Daniels was given an opportunity to speak. The crowd watched intently as he approached the microphone, his usual confidence replaced by visible unease. I made mistakes," he began, his voice shaky. "I didn't think about how my actions were affecting others. I see that now." The crowd murmured, some skeptical of his sincerity, others hopeful that accountability was finally being acknowledged. But the moment was interrupted when a member of the audience stood up and shouted, "It's too late for apologies. We need change, not excuses." The tension in the room was palpable. Daniels, visibly rattled, stepped back from the microphone and returned to his seat. As the meeting drew to a close, Nia approached the microphone. Despite her youth, her presence commanded the room's attention. "My parents taught me that standing up for what's right is never easy," she said. "But they also taught me that it's always worth it. This fight isn't just about justice for us. It's about creating a future where everyone is treated with dignity and respect." Her words were met with thunderous applause. Reporters scribbled furiously in their notebooks, and cameras captured every moment. Nia's speech became the defining moment of the evening, a symbol of resilience and hope that resonated far beyond the gymnasium. By the end of the night, it was clear that the fight for justice had grown into something much larger. Maya and David's story had inspired a nationwide movement, one that demanded systemic change and held those in power accountable. The following morning, headlines across the country declared victory for the community. Officer Daniels suspended amid harassment allegations. Families fight for justice sparks national conversation, and a daughter's voice becomes catalyst for change. As Maya and David watched the news, they felt a mix of relief and determination. Their fight was far from over, but they had taken a monumental step forward. And as Nia prepared to post her next video, she smiled, knowing that their story had not only changed their lives, but had also inspired countless others to stand up for what they believed in. The aftermath of the town hall was a turning point for the entire community. The echoes of Maya and David's fight for justice reverberated across the nation, But the resolution of their case and the steps toward change were yet to unfold. This was the moment where all the tensions, struggles, and sacrifices would culminate into a new chapter of accountability and hope. Following the town hall, the police department was forced to take swift action. Officer Daniels was placed on administrative leave, pending the results of an internal investigation. The pressure from the public, media, and legal entities ensured that the investigation would be thorough and impartial. Rebecca Chen worked tirelessly to ensure that the department's accountability was not limited to just Daniels. Her focus extended to the broader system that allowed his behavior to go unchecked. Meanwhile, Maya and David pursued their case through the legal system. Rebecca's legal team, now bolstered by a coalition of civil rights attorneys, filed a lawsuit against the police department. The charges ranged from harassment and racial profiling to emotional distress and defamation. The courtroom proceedings became a focal point for the nation, symbolizing the broader fight for justice and equity. In a key moment during the trial, body cam footage was played for the court. The video captured Daniels' blatant harassment and aggressive tone as he accused Maya and David of fabricated offenses. The room fell silent as the evidence played, the raw footage leaving no room for misinterpretation. Rebecca's closing argument was a powerful indictment of the systemic failures at play. "This case is not just about one family or one officer," she said. "It's about a community that has been silenced for too long. It's about dismantling the systems that perpetuate discrimination and ensuring that everyone, regardless of their background, is treated with dignity and respect." As the trial progressed, Daniels became increasingly isolated. His union distanced itself from him, unwilling to defend actions that were clearly indefensible. Fellow officers who had once remained silent about his behavior began coming forward, providing testimonies about his history of targeting minority families. The court of public opinion had already condemned him, and the legal system soon followed suit. The verdict was delivered in a packed courtroom. Daniels was found guilty of misconduct and harassment, and the department was held liable for its failure to address his repeated violations. The ruling was a significant victory for Maya and David, who were awarded substantial damages, but the true victory lay in the systemic changes that followed. The police department announced sweeping reforms, including mandatory anti-bias training, a review of disciplinary policies, and the establishment of a civilian oversight board. The reforms, though long overdue, were a step toward rebuilding trust between law enforcement and the community. For Maya and David, the victory was bittersweet. While they were grateful for the outcome, the journey had taken a toll on their family. Late one evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, they reflected on the fight they had endured. "I never imagined we'd have to go through something like this," David said, his voice heavy with emotion. "But I'm proud of how we stood together." Maya nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. "We didn't just fight for ourselves," she said. "We fought for every family that has been through this and for those who will come after us." Mia joined them, her phone in hand. Her latest video had just surpassed 10 million views, and the comments were filled with messages of support and gratitude. "You both inspired so many people," she said. "Our story is giving others the courage to speak out." David placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're the real hero, Nia," he said. "You gave us a voice when we didn't know how to fight back." Nia's online presence continued to grow, and she used her platform to advocate for justice and equality. She became a prominent voice in the movement, partnering with organizations that worked to combat systemic discrimination. Her videos highlighted stories of resilience and change, shedding light on the power of community and solidarity. One particular video, a montage of the family's journey from the initial harassment to the courtroom victory, became a cultural touchstone. It ended with Nia looking directly into the camera, her message clear and powerful. "This fight isn't over. Let's keep pushing for a world where justice isn't the exception. It's the rule." The video was shared by activists, celebrities, and political leaders, cementing Nia's status as a catalyst for change. But for her, the real reward was knowing that her family's struggle had made a difference. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood began to heal. The protests that had once filled the streets gave way to community gatherings and forums where residents discussed ways to move forward. Relationships between law enforcement and the community were slowly rebuilt through honest dialogue and mutual accountability. Rebecca Chen continued her work as a civil rights attorney. Inspired by Maya and David's courage, she often cited their case as a turning point in her career, one that reminded her of the profound impact of standing up for what's right. Maya and David found themselves at the center of these efforts, their voices respected and valued. They joined advisory boards and community panels, using their experience to advocate for lasting change. Their resilience became a beacon of hope for others facing similar struggles. Months after the trial, the family was invited to speak at a national civil rights conference. As they stood on stage before a packed auditorium, Maya addressed the audience with her characteristic grace and strength. "This journey wasn't easy," she said, "but it taught us that even in the face of injustice, we have the power to create change. We can't let fear or doubt hold us back. Together, we can build a world where everyone is treated with dignity, respect, and kindness." The audience erupted into applause, their standing ovation lasting long after Maya finished speaking. For the family, it was a moment of validation, a reminder that their pain and perseverance had not been in vain. As life returned to a semblance of normalcy, the family remained committed to their mission. Maya and David continued their advocacy work, while Nia pursued a career in media, using her storytelling skills to shine a light on important issues. Their bond as a family grew stronger, forged through the trials they had faced together. The neighborhood, once fractured by division, became a symbol of resilience and unity. And though the fight for justice was far from over, the changes sparked by Maya and David's story served as a reminder that progress was possible. Their journey was a testament to the power of courage, the importance of standing up for what's right, and the enduring strength of family and community. And as their story continued to inspire others, they knew they had made a lasting impact, a legacy of hope and justice for generations to come. As Maya, David, and Nia's story shows, standing up for justice can spark change far beyond what we imagine. What would you do in their situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories of resilience and hope. Together, we can build a world where justice and kindness prevail. Thank you for watching.